Bonita Norris, good morning, good lunchtime. How are you?
Very well, Nick. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good. Listen, thanks for joining me. I know you're dashing off to an event after this, so let's have a little chat and go from there. In preparation, one of the questions that we thought we'd ask you, which I thought was really, really interesting, is like, obviously you've done incredible things in terms of your career and the expeditions you've been on. Right? And one of the questions is kind of, how has your speech adapted over time as you've had questions and interactions from the audience to move you further and further away from just telling your story to actually giving the audience what they really want to hear?
That's a really interesting question. I think, you know, when you've sort of gone on a journey like I did, which was to go from being a complete beginner climber to then standing on top of Everest 2 years later in that roller coaster, you learn so much. But there was also a part of me that kind of assumed that everybody else probably just knew the stuff that I had to go to climb Everest to learn about the importance of connection with teamwork and the importance of just taking small steps when you're faced with a big goal and of taking risks. And I just kind of felt that everybody didn't need that shoved down their throats. So when I did tell my story, it really was a kind of, okay, and then I did this and then I did this. And there is still an element of, there's that linear journey in my presentation. But I couldn't believe when I started giving that speech that when I would start talking about things like connection to other people and the importance of being connected to nature in the mountains and things like that, the nods in the audience, you'd realize that actually this really resonates because we don't have these conversations every day. And so I feel like part of my job as a speaker is just to actually plant the seeds where it's okay to talk about some kind of quite intangible things like becoming better connected to your teammates or connecting better with nature and with yourself. And actually those things are really important, but because they're not so tangible, we don't really discuss them, and we don't, in our culture anyway, in Western culture, we're not so intuitive in that way. And so, yeah, I was really surprised that that those things were the things that resonated. And so I make my speech more about that now.
And how have you dealt in the last couple of years, certainly with, I suppose it's easy for us to draw parallels about climbing mountains kind of, and like the Everest we've all been on over the last couple of years. Is that too obvious for you? And have you been looking at other avenues, or is that what we as individuals who've never climbed Everest looking into kind of at over the last couple of years?
Well, it's really interesting because right up until lockdown came in March 2020, we could kind of tell that something was coming. You know, the tidal wave was about to sweep over us. And I even was at events where, you know, people were flying in from China to relay what was going on to their team. And the situation that they were kind of relaying was grim. And then it would be my turn to come on stage, and I would talk about the fact that, you know, there is this illusion that we have of control, and that is one of the major themes of my speech, is that on Everest, pretty much everything is out of our control: the weather, the avalanches, the rockfall, and therefore, you know, you really do have to learn to focus on what you can change, but also be humble enough to understand that you have a lot less control than what you think, and actually that allows you to perform better, I believe. But then often, so I would give that speech, and other people would be talking about, you know, this is really bad, guys. And then I would sit down for lunch afterwards with the CEO, the chief executive, the CFO, and they'd all say, yeah, it's going to be fine. It's not going to happen. We're going to be fine. And there's just that belief at the very top of businesses sometimes that, you know, we're more in control than what we realize. Well, the mountains always taught me it's often the opposite, and you have to be really humble about that. And I think everyone got a shock at the beginning of the pandemic, just how little control we actually have. And so that was a real great lesson for me, just seeing that happen in real time, something that I kind of implicitly understood from climbing. It was now happening in the real world, like, you know, the complete unexpected. You have to be ready to tackle anything. And I think people were just so determined to not want to sort of deviate from, like, things are going to be fine.
So can I ask, it's interesting because, listen, as we're going, whether you call it the next stage of the pandemic or moving into an endemic society or however we view it, when you come down from Everest, how do you keep that perspective of your kind of, and you're back into the real world, I suppose? How do you keep that perspective of your lack of control? Because I suppose my fear is the fact we just forget the last 2 years because it's too, horrible to remember. And we revert back to how we were before, because that gives us comfort.
Well, I think that there is comfort in things going back to the normal, if you like, or the way before. I think we have desperately missed things that, you know, have been shut off from us, like being able to be spontaneous, being able to go out and connect with people in real life. Again, it's those intangible things that have been taken away. Only when they've been taken away, we've realized how important they are. But I do believe that you're right, that we will go and make the same mistakes again. I do hope that for a lot of businesses and companies, it's been a wake-up call to realize that actually, you know, your employees aren't machines, they're not robots. We need a lot more than just a regular paycheck to feel fulfilled. And the lockdown and that huge change was a real opportunity to actually reevaluate and assess, you know, values and what gives people meaning at work. And I hope that the learnings from it at least will carry forward. But, you know, I do also, I don't know how much hope I hold out, because we are human and we tend to fall back into old habits.
So listen, kind of, you recently wrote your book, The Girl Who Climbed Everest. What's next for you? What's your plans?
Well, I wrote my first book. It was a memoir, but now I am in the midst of writing another one. If I could show you my living room right now, I've got paper all over the floor. I'm, you know, in the middle of an edit. So yeah, I'm hoping that will come out next year. And of course, now, you know, we're out of lockdown, hopefully there'll be more mountains in the future as well. So
have you got your eyes on anything coming up, or you're just thinking about it at the moment?
There's not a concrete sort of date, but I do have a concrete plan of what exactly the mountain would be that I'm going to climb next, and the style in which I'd like to climb it. So yeah, if anything, you know, definitely for me, being stuck at home for the last few years, this has just made me realize how important being in the mountains is. So I cannot wait to get back out there.
Brilliant. Bonita, thank you so much indeed. We look forward to hearing and watching you on your next adventures.
Thank you so much, Nick.
No worries.